The so we let me say where so for once I've got a positive surprise. Obviously, we screwed up terribly, and there are several 100,000 people have died who didn't have to die, and we so that in many ways it's been just horrific and things that you really wouldn't have believed. I mean, even I don't think would have been cynical enough to think that wearing a mask would become a symbol of, or refusing to wear a mask would become an identity symbol that basically, kill people to prove that you're a real American. But the economic response was far better than I would have expected. We had it was a whole stop and go response, but we did in fact provide a lot of aid to people who were unemployed. We provide a lot of money to families. So even with Trump still in the White House, it was as if faced with a real crisis, the usual suspects kind of, in a way, they were just paralyzed. They couldn't. This just didn't fit any way that they knew how to do things. They effectively allowed the structure of the economic relief program to be dictated by reasonable people, mostly Democrats. And now we've just had this extraordinary, again, a COVID relief bill from Joe Biden and the razor thin Democratic majority in Congress, which is far more ambitious, more progressive than I would have thought we were going to get. So, in a weird way, COVID has shown that there's still some possibility of doing the right thing.
I was going to ask later, but let's pursue because you mentioned it now. Is the 1.9 trillion
Yeah.
has been viewed as way too big by the opponents, which means the Republicans. And they're warning that inflation will result because we're putting all this money out to people, they'll spend it, and therefore there'll be a shortage of goods. And as a result, of course, prices will rise because that's what happens when supply is diminished, prices go up. Do you think that that's what's going to happen? Do you think that this is the right number? Too big? Too
Okay.
small?
It's actually this is actually a slightly more complicated question than one might want. Concerns that it's a lot of money going out there are not silly, and it's not just Republicans. There are certainly perfectly reasonable Democratic leading economists who are a little nervous, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some inflation from this. The U.S. is a huge economy, has a lot of still unemployed workers, but still, 1.9 trillion here, 1.9 trillion there, and soon you're talking about real money, even for America. So this is a big thing. And if it had been designed, if the only goal were to provide economic stimulus, then this would be too big a number. You could get enough to get us back to full employment while spending less, and which does raise the question: are we going to have some problems because we didn't because we spent more? But it's not. This is a bill that is it's actually it's using the economics of COVID. I mean, partly there are things we need to do. A lot of this is about, it's called the American Rescue Plan. And that's actually a good characterization. It's not a stimulus. It's about getting people through the still very, very difficult times created by the pandemic. So a lot of it is things like aid, like enhanced unemployment benefits, aid to state and local governments. There's things in there that are not the kinds of things economists would normally advocate, especially sending everybody a $1,400 check. That's justifiable in terms of the economics by the fact that not everybody's there are holes in the other things we're doing, and some of that money will make it will refresh the parts that other policies can't reach. The saving grace in a way, if you're worried about inflation, is that quite a few people are just going to save their $1,400 checks. We're not going to get as much excessive stimulus as you might have worried about otherwise. So I'm not sure that there's some magic this calculation that would lead you to this exactly this size bill. But if you take a look at it and you say, okay, which parts of it would you say you don't want to do? Do you not, do you not want to do those checks? Well, they will help some people who need help. We can afford them, and they're extremely popular. Democrats wouldn't control the Senate if they hadn't been able to campaign on those in Georgia. If we talk about the unemployment benefits, really, do you really want to cut back on that at a time when we still have, when we're still 10 million jobs down from pre-pandemic, and so on down the line? So it's a reasonable bill. I think there's some chance that there's a pretty good chance that we'll see an uptick in inflation over the next year. The chance that it will become a more enduring problem is way less than that. And I have to say, I think a lot of economists and public people are still stuck in the 70s. It's bell-bottom pants and sustained inflation are both probably not coming back.